What's up, everybody? This is Logan Hanks with the Living Fully Loaded podcast. Got an awesome guest for you today. This man is an author. He's written The Way of Men, Becoming a Barbarian, and many other titles that I'm sure you guys are familiar with. He's a very strong hold in the world of kind of pushing back against this weird age that's anti-masculinity. I think he's doing a very good job at pushing back against that and working on a lot of really cool things. And that is Mr. Jack Donovan. Jack, I appreciate you joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, man. It's an honor to have you on the show. Like I said, I really appreciate what you're doing. I think it's unfortunately necessary these days. I feel like back in the day, they probably didn't necessarily have to talk about masculinity and these things because it was just normal.
Well, yeah, I mean, you had a more homogenous society. So you had more people who were all on the same page about what we were doing and what the needs were and everything. And now you have the opposite of that. You have a very mixed society of a lot of different people with a lot of different ideas and so forth. So the definitions all break down. And that was intentional, obviously, for a lot of people wanted the definitions to break down. And I saw this years and years ago. I mean, I actually went to art school in New York City. So while this was a twinkle in their eye and they were like, figuring all this out, I was seeing it then. And then, years later, I was seeing it. And I started writing about it in the late 2000s. And Way of Men came out in 2012. And still it was a situation where, like, if you were talking about masculinity, there was something wrong with you. Yeah. To a lot of people, a lot of guys were like, what do you mean? What do you mean? We know about that. And they didn't see what was coming. And, it's been coming for a long time. And the world we live in now is kind of in many ways, unfortunately, men didn't see it coming, and so they couldn't stop it. And now, we're deep in it. And so masculinity is an important topic to talk about because, so many kids are fatherless too. Now so many kids are fatherless, so they don't have any good guidance, or they're getting bad information or like intentionally deceptive information from teachers and all kinds of social institutions and so forth. So there's a big they want them to see masculinity in a particular way. Yeah.
We live in a weird vortex. That's what the way I look at it now, where things that were once normal are now under attack. And like you said, it's kind of like by the time we see it, it's almost too late because the wheels have been turning for so long. And it's a long game, man, which I can put on a tinfoil hat from time to time. And I kind of wonder, who's really pulling the chains. And, there is a part of me that, kind of wonders about, China, for instance, they're doing this hyper masculine push. Like, if you look at the stuff they're putting out, it's ultra masculine. Whereas look at the stuff today in America and it's like, even Gillette, which used to be the best a man can get, now it's toxic masculinity. So like, I'm
still mad about that. They were the best razors to shave my head with, and I haven't been able to use them for years now.
Dude, I get it. I get it.
There is an agenda there. Yeah.
Yeah. It's weird. And I just wonder who's behind it. Now, that gives everybody a preview of what we're going to hit on in just a minute. Now, I do want to do, because my readers my listeners enjoy this, the general question. So the first one I got for you is, man, all right, if you had to choose to enter into the zombie apocalypse or a cyborg Armageddon, which one would you take your chances in?
Zombie apocalypse, for sure.
Yeah. All right, I'm with you, but
yeah. Well, obviously, we're already like facing Skynet now, and it's not cool.
Yeah.
So you would assume that they would also have all the tracking abilities and so forth. Zombies are just like, except for the fast zombies, they're scary. but you didn't specify. So,
Well, okay, it'd be like the World War Z zombies.
okay, well they're a little scary, but
Yeah,
they're not just like the Walking Dead zombies, which are pretty like like you got a shot.
yeah,
But no, I mean, yeah, cyborgs. Yeah, like you said, you assume they'd have higher technology and AI and all kinds of stuff. They just zap you from you wouldn't even know what happened. I mean, they can do
yeah.
that now, which is also scary. But it's we just get drone striked.
Yeah. Well, that was, see, I had this conversation just recently. A guy asked me that. He was like, zombies or cyborgs? And I'm like, well, we're probably going to see some Terminator shit soon. Like, so I'm going to go with zombies. And he's like, man, I don't want to get eaten to death. And I'm like, dude, you got to think about a robot that they could like see you through the walls. Zombies, even the fast ones, man, I feel like, hell, I can still board up my house, but like a freaking Terminator, I ain't stopping that dude, and my AR-15 ain't going to do much to that guy. So that's kind of how I look at it.
For sure.
All right, man. Now the last one here, you got to watch one film for 24 hours in a row. What are you watching?
24 hours in a row. I think it's safe to watch Lord of the Rings. Because, I mean, if you watch it as the whole thing, then you really don't have to watch it a few times.
Yeah, are you going to watch all three back to back?
Yeah. I think that would be fine. I would still get all turned up at the Black Gate speech, and it would be fine.
Yep. Yeah. And that would shave a significant amount of time out of that 24-hour time period.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's good, man. That's good. I like it. I'm a fan of Lord of the Rings. I have not seen the new stuff. I kind of refuse to watch it because it usually goes downhill when they try to do new versions of things.
Yeah. I mean, I saw The Hobbit. I guess there is a new something out, but I don't really care. Yeah.
Yep. I'm with you. All right, Jack, that's fun, man. Tell everybody that. Tell us kind of your stories. Take us back to who is Jack Donovan? How did you become the man you are today?
Well, I always like to tell people that, if you didn't know, I descended from Zeus's left testicle, and that's where the story begins. But no, I went to art school. I come from Pennsylvania originally. I went to art school. I was always interested in art and myth and history and so forth. That's always been a really big part of what interested me. And then around maybe my early 30s, I really took another look at masculinity and things that I thought was stupid when I was a kid growing up in the cornfield. I just wanted to get to the big city. I looked back and I'm like, oh, I missed some things.
Yeah.
And really kind of started a long process of really re-examining my life and talking about masculinity in a positive way. And someone told me that I didn't define masculinity very well. I was just saying what most people do, like you should do this and you should do that, and there's a movie quote and whatever. And so that became my project with The Way of Men, is to define masculinity in a way that was as close as I could get to always being true.
Yeah.
Because masculinity, I mean, you can define it in all kinds of different ways. Depending on, your religion or your culture or whatever. And then people want to argue about that. But what's the big picture? What do these things all have in common? And that's what The Way of Men was about. And of course that, then it draws from our like common evolutionary history. Well, what have men always been doing everywhere, for thousands and thousands and thousands of years? And then it starts to get real familiar.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, we've all been doing the same stuff. So, it's not as hard to define as I think people want it to be, but I can't give it to you in like a sentence. That's why I had to write a book.
Yeah. No, man, that's cool. Well, what pushed you? What sparked the art side of you? Was that something like even as a kid, you always knew you had that artistic spark to it?
Oh yeah. I mean, that was my first talent. I mean, I was, in elementary school, I was winning art contests and whatever. I mean, I was always really good at drawing. And, then I went to New York City to go to school for it for a while. I never really finished that, but, that's always something that, that's my fallback basic interest in life is art and beauty and aesthetics and so forth. And, and in many ways, I mean, in the way that I look at the world and interact with things and my motivations, when I saw what was happening to masculinity, in many ways, I thought I saw something that, beautiful and powerful that was dying in the world.
Yeah.
And so it is related in some way to aesthetics, not just like prettiness, but like the poetry of, Homeric masculinity, like in heroic masculinity, is something that was dying in the world, and I don't know if there's anything more beautiful than that.
Yeah.
The young man who goes out and dies so that other people can live. I mean, what do you got beyond that?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting too, because it's kind of a unique concept in today. Well, I don't want to say necessarily in today, but it's almost been there. I feel like there's been a clash with art and then masculinity. Like that's an interesting combination to me, because, if you, like, I'm here in Tennessee, very blue collar area. If you went around and you were like, art school, masculinity, those two would typically not mesh together. So like, it's a pretty cool combo to me.
Yeah. And maybe it helped me see some things from a different way and more evocative way. But, and that's a problem with American culture. And I have a speech that I'm working on for a conference I'm going to be in coming up. And that's something that happened in American culture. There's kind of a jock nerd problem in American culture. When you think about culture, really, art and culture, men made all of it.
Yeah.
Men made all of it. Men designed all the cathedrals and all the statues and all the poetry, and they did all of it.
And that's not sexist. That's reality.
Yeah. That's history.
Yeah.
That's how it happened. And it is, I would say that one of the things that I can talk about women with and actually enjoy the conversation is actually art. Because in the 20th century, that changed, I think, a lot, and especially in America, because even if you look at the founders, George Washington, you read his biography, and he's like picking out his suit with talking about tailor, like, I need it to have this many buttons, and what is the style in England right now? And like he's very, very, he's picking out monograms for his like dishes and stuff. He was fastidious about like every detail, and also a badass.
Oh yeah.
And so you can be both. And like England has we have in the modern era, we have that James Bond kind of archetype, where it's like this guy, can make up a cocktail on the fly and wear a suit and whatever, and also kill you.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's being good at everything is the ultimate man. It's not just being good at this one set of things. And I think one of the things that made that happen really, it probably has to do with communism and a whole bunch of other things. There's all kinds of other things involved. And I think men don't like art because art doesn't like them.
Yeah.
Like the art world became a thing that like was positioned against masculinity. Art used to be, we're making statues of war heroes. That was art, what art was. And it was celebrating the best things about men and masculinity, but now it's positioned against masculinity. So I think that's a problem. It's like, well, you don't like me, I don't like you. And so like, they became separate. And that's really sad, because then now the far left and people who hate men actually own the entire creative world.
Yeah.
Like you look at Hollywood, you look at who makes our movies and what their messaging is and all that. We ceded all that territory of them. So they're in control of our dreams, which is bad. Like we need to take control of our dreams, like that's important,
Is that another instance of us not realizing that the rug has been pulled out from under us? You think that by the time we realize that shift had happened, it's too late?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because, for a long time, they, like there was a balance there. You look at movies in the 70s, you had all this hippie kind of stuff and whatever, but they're also making very masculine movies and so forth. And none of these guys would come out at that time saying like masculinity is bad and toxic. They weren't saying that kind of stuff. The movie stars of that time weren't saying that stuff. And now that's all you get. So, it has changed, but it was going that way for a really
Yeah.
long time. And I think that we just weren't paying attention, and that's the same thing happened with politics. I think, men just whatever, like, fuck bitches get money. And they were doing their own thing, and they're like, well, we'll just let these other people run the world for us. And we are now seeing what happens when we allow the worst people to run the world for us. So men need to step back into that, all these areas of life that they've abandoned while they're just like, oh, I'm just going to make money and let some other people take care of some stuff. We have to care about our own society.
And it's really interesting, like thinking about it with art, because I feel like a lot of men, and especially, I feel like especially in the blue collar world, they're like, that's not my arena. I don't care about art. But like you said, it actually ultimately spills into your dreams and our children's dreams, because that is the movies that we see in the world today. I mean, every movie you watch, I joke about it, not to get off on this tangent, but I joke every movie I watch, I'm like, all right, there's going to be a gay person that's going to come in any minute. In every film, James Bond is going to become, he'll be a woman soon. Like all of these things are changing. And it's like, this is because we don't stand up for our beliefs and our thoughts. It's because we've been, they called it the silent majority. And that was like the worst insult to me, because I'm like, that's bad. Why are we so silent?
Right. Yeah. Well, I think the assumption was also that the other side is reasonable and honest. And that was not true. That was not true. Like, I mean, because, they'd make reasonable arguments. Be like, well, that's fair. That's not that bad. I mean, that's kind of how feminism happened. Like, well, like, I have a daughter. Maybe she would like to do something cool in the world. All right. And then, all of society falls apart around it. But like, the intention, when the arguments were made, they were made in a way to appeal to us.
Yeah.
It sounded reasonable. And then unfortunately you have this, snowball effect, or, like the slippery slope that then happens. And, it's like, for instance, I was talking about this with someone this morning. It's like, in the 70s there have always been gay people. That's reality all throughout history.
Yeah.
It's like 2% of the population is something's going to happen, and that's the way it's going to work out. And in the 70s and so forth, and before that, I mean, you'd have people that would literally, they were being rounded up, beaten up, thrown in jail, and forced to register as sex offenders.
Yeah,
which is kind of messed up.
Yeah.
Like they're grown adults. They're doing whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
That's not fair. That's not cool. That's not freedom.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be happening in America. But then fast forward, how did that lead to Drag Queen Story Hour for your kids? That's like the first part was reasonable, and then it went out of control. And it went into like, now it's becoming popular, and it's almost like okay to say, at least on the Republican side of the spectrum, that like to talk about like you're grooming now, like that's what that is. It's kind of messed up, but that's kind of the new insult, and it's not wrong. And that's what's it's really interesting to see that come into the discussion now.
Yeah. Well, it worries me when it starts to bleed in with like our children. Like you said, that the sexuality of any caliber, really, I don't think should ever be like pushed on children. Like, that's not something that, I mean, their minds are not going there. Why would you put it there? Like, it's kind of stealing their innocence. And, that's where I don't know. And that's where I ultimately am like, what is the goal here? What is the end goal of this? And, and that's one of the things that tripped me out with The Walking Dead. Did you ever watch that show?
Yeah, I watched it for like the first 2 or 3 years, I think.
Yeah.
And then, it became very repetitive. After you guys just solved this problem and you know what to do. Why did you make the same mistakes over and over and over again? It just became kind of like, this is just to create more drama, so you have something to have on a show.
They
They would have
definitely
created a civilization by now,
yeah. Oh yeah, they definitely beat a dead horse with that show, but like
Yeah.
the part that really got me, like you said, statistically, I think they say 2 to 3% of the population's gay. And
Yeah.
it was like 5 gay characters on The Walking Dead at one time. And I'm like, damn, 50% of the population is gay according to The Walking Dead. Like at this point.
Yeah.
And it gets ridiculous because it's like you are absolutely pandering to the left, like you said, and so but what is the goal? That's what I don't understand. What is their goal?
A friend of mine was writing about this the other day. His name is CB Robertson. He blogs under Caffeine and Philosophy, and he wrote a piece for Chest recently about science. And I've known him for years, and he's really a smart thinker. He was explaining at least his take on it the other day that what they believe, a lot of these Marxists believe, is that they're actually trying to create messed up people because messed up people will want to destroy the system, and they're trying to destroy the system, and remake civilization.
Yeah.
I don't think that they have a very good plan for how that's what they're going to do with civilization, because a lot of their theories come out of stuff that's already been disproven. Like they used to believe that humans didn't have nature, that there was no human nature, and there absolutely is. And so I think that that's maybe what your low level Marxist blue hair believes. And then obviously there are other people who are not that, who are taking advantage of that situation and don't care about what happens to your kids. Yeah. I mean, I think that if anything you've seen over the past 2 years, you almost have to try really hard to not believe it, put your hands over your ears, and to see that there are people in charge who don't want us to succeed and don't want us to be happy and healthy and all those things. And if you can't see that after the past 2 years, I don't know how to help you. But they aren't trying to do something that's good. Yeah. So they're kind of, I think, letting these people run the circus and just kind of let society fall apart. And, a lot of people have talked about how it's about breaking down the nuclear family to a certain extent, because then the government steps in. The government gets to tell you what your morality is. And maybe it's whatever it says today. It's not consistent. They can control people really well if they don't have any center. If you have a strong identity, then you are very easy. You're difficult to control, because you're like, well, no, these are my people, and we believe this, and this is what we're doing. This is what I was taught, and this is like my background. This is my whole, axis mundi. It's the whole axis of my world, that my internal world. And if you have no axis mundi and it's controlled by like whatever's trending on Twitter, then they can just make whatever they want trend on Twitter, and then that's your new morality for this week. And that's really what's been happening. You're seeing it with Ukraine and so forth right now. They've decided who the heroes are and who they're not, who the good guys and the bad guys are. And now we're all going to be given that message, and then, dance monkeys dance. Get put up your little flags and do your little things and say the words and get behind, and when really whatever is going on is much more complicated and probably planned. And so it's but that's what they're doing. It's like, oh well, pandemic's over, but here's Ukraine. This is what you're going to care about today. And I think there are a lot of people who are aware of that now. I mean, they broke a lot of trust that they can never get back from a lot of people. I mean, speaking of zombies, I mean, if you would have told me, 5 years ago, if the zombie apocalypse really happened, I would also be going to the CDC. They're always trying. All the zombie movies are always trying to get to the CDC. Now I would go the other way. I don't trust.
Yeah, they'd be turning us into zombies. Yeah.
It came from there, probably. And so many people feel that way, and you just can't get that trust back.
No, and that's dangerous, man. That's really dangerous, because I was just having this conversation with a buddy, I think yesterday. We were talking about that because he was he was on board with the vaccine. I was not on board with the vaccine, and we were actually having a pretty civil discussion about it. And I mean, good friends. I don't care if you want to get the vaccine. I don't give a shit. I mean, like, that's my thing. If you really want to get it, then get it. But I did not want to get it.
Don't shed on me, you know?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. I like that. Yeah. But that's what I told him. I said, dude, it's dangerous now because you already, Americans inherently, we kind of, you know, by nature, we're a little bit untrusting of the government. Like, that's part of our code, almost as Americans. But now it's like, wow, like, let's say something does seriously happen, some sort of illness, and they have a legit rock solid vaccine that will 100% cure it. People are going to doubt the shit out of it because they don't know what to believe. Like, I think you'd have a good half the population or whatever portion there that would be like, I'm not getting that. I mean, and it could be rock solid, but it's because of the damage that they've done in breaking their trust with the people. Absolutely.
Yeah. And you just don't know. It's very frustrating because you really don't even know what's going on in the world anymore. Like, they've succeeded in at least creating confusion because
they've done well.
If there's something on the news, I'm like, I don't really know what happened. That's not real. You know, like, whatever it is, it's not real. You know, like, if it didn't happen down the street, you know, whatever, you know, like, like someone running a vehicle into my building and stealing from me. Yes, that happened because I can see the glass outside. But beyond that, you know, something happened on the news. I'm like, I don't know what happened. You know, like, I don't know what these liars are telling me today. You know, and a lot of it, they're half truth. Things are happening, but you know, we don't know the interpretation or really why they happened or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's really unfortunate because I think maybe this has probably been happening for longer than we know or are aware of. I mean, there's been a lot of creepy things in the world that, like, the CIA and all kinds of things have been doing, and they sounded a lot more like conspiracy theories before the last 2 years.
Yeah,
and now,
they did.
What were you doing? What did you really create AIDS? Like,
yeah.
What you're like? What are you doing? What have you guys been up to? You know?
Yeah, it's, man, I don't know. I just, and you mentioned George Washington earlier. I kind of think back to George all the time. I'm like, you know, what would George be doing these days? Like,
motherfuckers right and left.
that's what I said. He'd be slitting throats at this point. Like, you know, and a lot of times I think about it from a taxation side. I'm like, man, we started this to get away from some of these crap taxes, and now it's just constant taxing. So I'm like, what would our forefathers think? But I mean, just like this weird age of, like, wokeism. And I heard you, man, I can't remember what, I listened to one of your talks. I don't remember where you were at, but I was listening to it, and you were talking about kind of this weird age of social justice warriors. And, you know, I was thinking about, there was no social justice warriors because men had to be actual warriors. So, you know, they weren't worrying about the social justice aspect because they were truly having to fight for their lives.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't, the social justice thing is very vicarious. You know, you can just, and it's very feminine in a lot of ways. I mean, it's very gossip based and shame based in terms of, like, can you believe they said a thing? That's why I hate Twitter so much. It's like, I feel like it's the worst thing that's happened to, like, human interaction, is that it's because it's very feminine, very gossipy. And that's all. And that it became like, you turn on ESPN and what do you hear? Like, can you believe that LeBron said, "Oh my God"? And that's the way women talk. Like, can you believe that they said a thing? You know, and it's all virtue signaling, and it's just, you know, ESPN is just male gossip about the same stuff. You know? And it's very not productive. And it makes us all kind of worse, you know.
You know who the big one was for me that, like, I was like, man, this is really bled out, was freaking Jimmy Kimmel. because I thought about him in The Man Show years ago when I'd watch him with Adam Carolla, and they'd have like chicks jumping on the trampoline called juggies or something and be like chugging beer and talking about boobs. And then like fast forward now, you know, he's crying on TV because people are not like getting vaccinated and they're endangering his kid. And, you know, he's blasting Republicans and like all this stuff. And it's just like, what the heck, man? The Kool-Aid is strong with this guy.
Yeah. I mean, it's so hard to tell what happens in that world. Is that all about social approval in their sphere? Because I lived in LA for a little bit, and I have a pretty good idea of like, the way social disapproval works. I lived in Portland, like in terms of like, you get into a certain social group and like you're not allowed to have a different opinion. Like that's not. They just assume that we all have the same opinion, and if you said something else, they'd be like, the gossip brigade, and they're like, we can't talk to him anymore. Like he can't come to our parties anymore. Yeah. And is it that, like, is that what's happening? Is that like, he's just been there for long enough? I mean, cause I actually, oddly enough, I lived in Hollywood and the guy that I lived with worked on the Jimmy Kimmel show.
Really?
Well, he worked at a restaurant that catered to it. So he was there like a lot. And so it's an odd connection. I don't think I ever met Jimmy Kimmel, but I mean, I know he did. And it's just an odd connection, but yeah, I mean, you're right there. I mean, his show, I don't know where it is now, but it was right in the place that everybody knows, like the strip there with the, where all the old movie theater is and where they have the Oscars now and whatever. His studio is right there, I think, right in that area. And, if you're just there all the time and that's your bubble, is that what you could come? Or is he just doing what he's told?
Yeah.
Or is it, like you spent too much time with your wife and your wife says that, and now you say that, because that's a thing with dudes, for sure. Like, like your wife or / girlfriend has an opinion, and you can almost see over the years, you're like, you hear it come out of their mouths, and you're like, oh, is that what she told you?
Yeah. Hey, well, that makes me feel pretty good then, because I'm actually having the opposite effect. I'm rubbing off on my wife, because like, I can't remember what she said the other day. Somebody didn't use a blinker, and I get road rage from time to time just because I'm like if I'm sitting waiting for a car to turn and they won't turn their blinker on, something that stupid, I'm just like, you don't have the respect to turn your damn blinker on and let me go on and pull out. And my wife was bitching about somebody not using her blinker, and she was like getting mad about it. And I'm like, there you go. I'm having a positive effect upon you.
There you go.
But
yeah, I mean, I the same thing. Like, I kind of created a monster. Like the guy I lived with, like, it was probably like a Mexican dude from California, and now, like last night, I come home. He came from home for work, and he's like, put something on, and I'm like, "What are you watching?" I was like, "I really want to see this Hunter Biden documentary."
Yeah. Oh, man, I don't know. Man. Which it all kind of ties back. It ties in well with part of your message is men need that group of men. They need men, because it's the old adage there, iron sharpens iron. And like, I think that's one of the things I love about podcasting is I get to talk to a lot of great men that are doing things like that. And so, but they need that core group. And, that's why I did get a kick out of with Trump. They came after him, said this locker room talk stuff that tripped me out. And I'm like, so you just mean dudes talking like dudes, basically, is what you're saying.
Right. I mean, it is a scary world that we live in, that like you can't even have a conversation or have a joke and not because masculine humor is pretty dark.
Yes.
We tend to have dark humor and talk about messed up shit, and that doesn't mean that we want that to happen or necessarily we're like that but we'll say some pretty raw stuff, and that's what make each other laugh, and it's funny. Yep. And that doesn't mean that we're gonna have a rape party next week, but that it ruins a lot of, I think, the ability of men to even have fun or like laugh or do anything that they normally do. Funny,
Yeah.
you know, it's funny you said that about the Trump thing. I went out on a date with a stripper in Portland years ago, and not too long ago, maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, and she was convinced that she was getting hit on more because of Trump saying "grab the pussy" or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you are the most delusional creature. You're a stripper.
Yeah.
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 You're getting groped by men because that's your job.
Yeah.
Like,
it's not this sudden melt of morals in the country. It's just, yeah. You know, it is what it is.
That's what you do for a living. You know, you're naked.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Well, it's, I don't know, man. It all ties back into this weird attack on masculinity. And that's, you know, I made a note here of some of the different things. I mean, the toxic masculinity push, you know, I don't hear the toxic masculinity much anymore because they've almost like, I feel like they've weaved it in now. Like it's like almost expected. You know, obviously in the news right now is this Leah Thomas swimmer. And it's, you know, he was like 460 something ranked in the men's group. And then he's first in the women's. I'm curious your thoughts, man. I got to hear your thoughts on it.
Well, I mean, it's almost like thoughts. You know, if you're just a normal, sane person, the thoughts are obvious. Like, it's a dude. It's a dude. I mean, that's hate speech now. But you know, like, and because they've manufactured that in like probably like 5 to 8 years.
Yeah.
You were totally allowed to say that 5 to 8 years ago, and then it became like a big taboo. And what's funny is it became a big taboo because of what's his face,
Bruce Jenner.
Bruce Jenner. That was when it broke.
Yeah.
Like everyone was like, they're still crazy up until you know, Bruce Jenner, and then it got pushed. And what's funny is because Bruce Jenner is like, no, she shouldn't be competing with dudes. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. And did you see? Did you see his response? Because they were like, he's saying the hate speech again, and Bruce was like, Caitlyn, whatever, was like, no, I'm just the only one with the balls to say it.
Right. Yeah. He's become a funny character in American culture. But it's just the move from that to like pronouns. I thought it's all the software had pronouns, so I made mine God King on the way in. But I had to be like he, him. Like I'm like, the fact that people have to do that now is so ridiculous.
It is. But, you'll notice I didn't even put any. I just bypass it.
Yeah. I never put it for anything. Like, but I was just like, oh, it'll actually like, because usually it makes you. It gives you only specific options.
Yeah.
Because enough people were doing that for a long time. And I'm like, oh, it's going to let me put whatever I want. All right. But yeah, the swimming thing, I think that's actually kind of a good thing that's happening because it's so obvious. And it's so obvious, and it's really, it's an easy win almost for the people who oppose that, you know, trans inclusion or whatever.
Yeah.
Because it's so obvious that something's wrong.
Yeah.
It's not like, I mean, if she was coming in, you know, like 100th, you know, if it wasn't winning, no one would care.
Yeah.
You know, and it'd be like, oh, well, that, you know, the dude does a tuck and gets into women's swim and stuff and you know, whatever. But, you know, that it'd be like, whatever. But the fact that he's dominating the sport and just looks like a dude, you know, like,
it does. Yeah. I mean, towering over.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, that's why they have gender differences and weight classes and all that kind of stuff. It's like for the same reason that, you know, I don't, you know, would never be paired to fight with Half Thor or whatever, you know, like, yeah, because that's not fair.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, man. I don't know. I just don't. I don't know. Like I'm kind of with you. I feel you on that. Like I think it's almost shoved it so into the light. It's kind of like that same time the the tranny MMA fighter like beat the living hell out of that chick. You know, like I think he like broke her orbital bone and like just absolutely smashed her face. And you know, Joe Rogan naturally caught a lot of heat because he was like, "That's a dude beating the hell out of a chick. That does not need to be happening." Like, and that's it. And so, but now I haven't heard any more about that. I don't know if that person is even still fighting anymore.
Right.
But I do feel like maybe the tides are turning. And this is it's actually the very opposite of this whole feminist push that we've been seeing for years, because our wacko Secretary of Health dude chick that's up there, you know, he's like nominated for Woman of the Year. You know, Bruce Jenner, I think, was like Woman of the Year. So it's like, all right, so men are now, if you wanted to get real offensive, you could be like, we're just so good at everything that we're even better at being women than women.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. We've already done all that stuff, you know, historically, like, you know, like everything that you do, we kind of invented. So, you know, like, I mean, that's what they used to say in the 30s too. I have like an old magazine from like the 1930s where like, it was kind of like criticizing feminism from the perspective of a guy in the 1930s. And it was like, you know, everything they do, we do better than they do. Like, you know, like who are the best they cook, but who are the best chefs in the world? They're all men. You know, it was just, you know, did all this, you know, like, and that's, you know, not even necessarily true all the time, but anymore. But it is funny. It is funny, and the fact that this has happened has really put a light on how absurd it is, and the whole clown world thing that everybody, that caught on. It's definitely making it look more and more and more like clown world, like everything is just a joke.
Yeah.
You know, nothing serious. You can't take sports seriously. You go, okay, because you know this is happening, and then there's so many things that are like things that are obviously not true. They're going to put out there and say that they're true over and over again. Like men can get pregnant, and you know, and like, okay, well, you're now just talking nonsense.
Yeah.
And you know, it's clear that you want to talk nonsense because you know it's exciting. You know, but it's not. It's not reality, and people aren't going to buy it. You know, like so it's good. You know, like I want to be Jocko with the swimming thing. Like good, fine, good. I'm good. That's happened. You know.
Well, did you notice? Like I saw the later pictures, and it showed the dude up there, and then the three chicks that like came in the following like second through fourth. They were together. They all got together and took pictures. And so like a lot of people have been saying like the chick that came in second, like they're kind of, a lot of people are basically just wiping out the confused fella off of there and just focusing on these others. And, man, it's like so stupid. You know, there's an old skit that I watched several years ago, and it was from Blue Collar Comedy Tour. So it was Jeff Foxworthy, Ron White, Larry the Cable Guy, and all them guys. And it was the politically correct Dukes of Hazzard. And they had like changed the flag out with a gay pride flag. The Boss Hogs or whatever, he was a black guy, and their uncle was a Jew, and like it like went into this, and it was hilarious several years ago. Now you watch it and it's like, dude, this is like they were like predicting the future, like basically with this.
Yeah.
I mean, we live in a parody.
Yeah, it's like someone needs to like wake us up or something because we're in a really messed up, funny dream. It is ridiculous, and it is kind of this clown world thing, and I mean it's funny. I mean, even like you have, you know, like the president of the United States, you know that he's like not there.
Yeah,
I mean that's obvious to everybody, and he's just, you know, I think I posted at one point like, you know, like, we're going to look back on this. We've all participated in elder abuse, you know, like that. It's some doddering old man who just, you know, poops himself, and like, you know, like it's sad to watch, but the fact that we're believing it and doing this whole charade, and he's being filmed in front of like fake Oval Office things, and it's just very strange. It's a weird timeline, like he says,
Where do you see us going? Do you see us correcting course, or do you see it continuing and getting worse?
Well, you could say, what do I see and what do I hope? They're very different things. I don't know. I would love to see a big turnaround, but it has to be very big. And I think it's probably going to be a lot longer coming than, unless something snaps.
Yeah.
But they've been really good at whatever, running the throttle or whatever on the crazy. Because like the vaccination thing, like that, people were ready to go. That was a big enough line. That was probably the biggest line I've seen in my life. Like if that has to go down, like people were ready to be like, hell no. That's for sure. And I was too. I was like, there's no reason. No.
Yeah.
And now we're all kind of being proven right. By all the information that comes out, whatever. And, but I think if they would have pushed that into like a forced thing, that would have been a breaking point.
Yeah.
Just in the way that you can't actually go around forcibly disarming people. Cause that's not going to work out.
Yeah.
Like you can do it like in incremental little things, and like, oh, you can put one less bullet in your gun, like you can do that kind of stuff and people will be okay with it. But like, if you do it, well, they don't have the policing structure to come around and take those, and I mean, I think in maybe liberal cities, they think that that's real, but obviously they haven't been to like all of the South or Texas or like really the whole middle of the country. Like, no, those dudes have many, many guns in their houses.
And
and they're like set up for this. Like that's not real.
There's people that dream of that day.
Oh yeah, they've been waiting for. There are like Vietnam vets. I thought when I lived close to Portland, I lived like an hour and a half outside of Portland, right before I moved to Utah, and the town it was like a small town, like a smallish town, like like 30,000 people or something like that, and I thought about, and the Antifa was like intimating that they were going to start coming out to the suburbs, and like they did come to the town, like like an extra half hour away from me. Like they were moving out and trying to start trouble further out.
Yeah,
and I'm like, and I thought about it. I'm like, well, I'm up on a hill, and there are so many, like because you can see for the flags in the yards and the stickers on the trucks. Do you know how many Vietnam vets have been waiting to kill communists since the 70s that are like, they're like in between me and them? Like, there's some dude like sitting in his, he's like, it's about time.
Yeah, he's waiting. He's been waiting for that moment of like redemptive payback. So he can't wait for that to happen.
Yeah. Like, give him a reason. Like, he was coming right for me. Like,
oh man, I was just today, me and my cousin were talking about that, like on the news. It kills or trips me out whenever somebody gets arrested. Like, I don't know. I don't even know what some of the reason would be, but you'll see it on the news and they'll be like, he had an arsenal at his home. And then they'll name like he had 4 guns and like 800 rounds of ammo. And I'm like, if that's an arsenal, then I don't know what do I have? I'm like a warlord. And so it's interesting, man. It's interesting, the strange dynamics across the country. And which, I mean, one of the cool things, and I've talked to several guests about this, when you go and actually talk to people, because I mean, you're what part of the country are you in? I know you're Mountain Time. So where are you now?
I'm in Salt Lake City.
Okay. So I'm in Tennessee. You're in Salt Lake City. We're vastly different regions here, but we're on the same page. I've talked to guys in like Montana, Texas, South Carolina, like all over the place. I've talked to women that are in like Florida and all these other, we're all on the same page here. So it's, You know, that's where it is vital, I think, for people, kind of like you said, quit watching the news. And actually, I think it's really important to just talk to people, because then you realize, like, man, not everybody are these freaking Fruit Loops that we're seeing on the news. You know, those are the loudest people in the room are usually not the majority.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that like I said, they own culture and they own the news and they own tech, which is a problem.
Yeah.
And then, we kind of need to, there's take that back, or the better thing is probably create a parallel economy. And I try to support anything like that comes out, even though most of it fails or like is just crappy. But like I'm on Gab, and I pay for membership on Gab just because like that should exist.
Yeah.
Something has to exist that's not these three companies,
Yep.
and I'm hoping that whatever I almost forgot about it, and it just came up in conversation last night. The whole Trump, the Truth Social thing.
Hell, I forgot about that. Nice
if he actually finally manages to pull that off.
Yeah.
Because he has. I mean, if he can't do it, I'm kind of concerned about who can. With all the money and the power and the connections and the zeitgeist and the whatever. All these things like that need to happen. Like you're not going to take over CNN and fix it.
Yeah.
You just have to create a parallel alternative and actually make it successful. And the thing is, the tricky thing that all these things are running into, I think, is just, getting a big enough audience so that it's lucrative to be on their platforms.
Yeah.
And like for me, it's like, well, okay, I have Instagram and I have whatever, 45,000 followers. I have like 800 on Gab, and that's anybody who has, and I'm on the low end. It's like, if anybody who has something to sell or a message to get out or whatever, they're looking for like, well, give me a reason. I need to still make money, move for, how are they going to move, show me how to make money on Rumble and I'll move there from YouTube, it's a kind of a catch-22 that they have such a big audience and they have so much money that it's hard to create something to compete with them. But, I'm willing to give it a try whenever I can, just because that has to happen. If that doesn't happen, we're kind of screwed. The thing in tech doesn't change. Like we can't talk to each other. I mean, now we're like, can I say that? Can I say this thing that's obviously true? Which is a bad place to be in.
It is. Well, that's like something I'm going to make an effort to not do anymore. And I had not thought about it until one of my favorite pages, the Babylon Bee, had shared something, but saying biological male and biological female, that's actually a pretty redundant and stupid thing to say, because at the end of the day, saying male and female is saying their biology. I should not have to say a biological male or a biological female. Like, just the fact that I have to like showcase really what I mean by that is kind of stupid in itself. And so, like I said, I'm not going to do it anymore. If I say male, I'm obviously referring to a biological male, because that is the only male that there is. Like that.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's almost hate speech to go to, like, how about XX or XY?
Yeah.
Because no matter what you do, that doesn't change.
Yeah.
Yes. Like, you can take all the drugs in the world and have all the surgeries in the world, but XX and XY stay. And you could say there's all the kinds of like weird exceptions, like people's stuff doesn't develop right or whatever, but that's like the tiniest part of the population. It's just XX and XY.
Did you ever? Did you see when Ben Shapiro, they had him on this little panel, and one of them there was a guy who was actually a Navy SEAL that became a woman, transitioned, and ran in politics, and they're debating. And, Shapiro, he obviously, he calls it what it is. It's gender dysphoria. And the guy is sitting beside him, this massive, it's a big, huge dude with long hair wearing a dress, and talks like with a deeper voice than I do. And Shapiro, and they're having this back and forth. And the guy next to Ben says something, and Ben goes, "Well, what's your chromosomes?" He asks the guy that, and the dude like puts his hand on Ben's shoulder and says, "If you ever say that to me again, you'll leave here in an ambulance." Like,
yeah.
But it's like,
well,
what?
That was very feminine. Thank you.
Yes. But like, why would that offend him? He's just asking his biological makeup.
Yeah. That actually just kind of shows that he's crazy.
Yeah.
Like that. It's like, wait, do you want to be a woman, or do you want to show you how tough you are and that you're a murderer? Is that like, what are you trying to be here? It's, are you just, it goes into like, okay, like you want attention for something,
yes.
you snapped in some way and now you want attention, and you're getting all this affirmation, and then it's feedback. It's a feedback loop, I've found that as well. Like, especially living in New York for a while and whatever. It's like, don't mess with drag queens, dude. They'll mess you up. There's an angry man inside that dress.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the classic video, the dude that's like, it's ma'am in the store hollering because the guy calls him sir and he's dressed like a woman, and he goes, it's ma'am. So what do we do? What do we do as men? Like, what path do you recommend? I mean, how do we do this?
What do you mean as far as like, I think obviously the really hard thing is to not be afraid of speaking the truth. Like you said, don't be the silent majority.
Yeah.
And I think that we've rolled over too much with too many things. And been like, because, especially this is our weakness in the sense of like Americans, like you said, they're, very, very suspicious of the government. We're also very freedom oriented.
Yeah.
And man, I don't care what you do with your body. In fact, that is what freedom is. Don't make me talk about it in a certain way. Don't make me like go into a little piece of theater with you. But I don't care what you do to your body. That's freedom. Like, do whatever. I don't want to pay for it. And, I don't feel like I need to indulge what you're doing. But knock yourself out. You only got one life. Do whatever you want with your body. Do whatever, do it with your land, with your company, with whatever that's what freedom is. And so we want to live and let live, I think, in a lot of ways. We don't want to control other people. The best men in America really don't want to control other people.
Yeah.
Especially when I talk to a lot of the, accepting your example, of course, the your operators and so forth. I mean, when I talk to those guys, they don't want to control people. The best dudes and all the best dudes I've met, they really don't want to control people or tell them what to do. It's kind of like the middle guys who want to who are like a little insecure and whatever, who want to push people around, and you use the other, that my dad's going to beat up your dad kind of thing to push people around, use these. I mean, you're seeing it with all the, you saw it a lot with the vaccinations and stuff like that. Like, someone should go force those people to do that. Like, oh, you're going to do it? No, you're not going to do it. You want someone to go force the other dude. It's, and so they want to use power, but they don't want to be responsible for having it. But I think that we have to, continue to just be honest and draw our lines as to where, like I said, the vaccination thing was a big line, and keep drawing lines. Like, yes, you can do what you want with your own body, but no, I'm not going to call you whatever you want.
Yeah.
And, just keep speaking up for things like that. Like, you can do what you want, but that you don't get to control what I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that that's where we're at. I think that, when you come back down to it, what America really, is, I mean, if you go back to the Bill of Rights, I mean, I wrote about this a few years ago. Bill of Rights still pretty good. As a basis, as a baseline for what sane Americans could agree on, I feel like can we go back to that as a here's what we got in common. You can do whatever you want over here and do whatever you want over there, but we need to be able to agree on that.
Yeah.
Like otherwise it's just about battling for who's going to oppress who, you know, like who's going to enforce their way of life on somebody else. And I don't think that's what the best men in America want. I don't think that they want to make other people do stuff. I think they just want to be left alone and to have their kids left alone. You know, like don't teach my kids your crazy shit. you know, like, but yeah, like you can do crazy shit. Just don't. That's not what your job is. You know, like they stay away from my kids. That stay away from all that. And so I think that that's where the sensible position is. And I think that just getting to that sensible position, not being afraid of it. You know, if you think, you know, we were talking about George Washington, the American Revolution, and so forth. When you think of how many people were like, you're probably not going to win against the king, so we're just going to not participate in this. Yeah. You know, like that was a lot of the people. I mean, that was like, probably most of the people. Yeah.
Well, wasn't it something like, what was the 3%ers? Wasn't it only 3% that fought in the Revolutionary War?
Yeah, that's what people say. Yeah, that's what people say. And so, you know, but everybody else was just on their farm being like, I'm just going to try and stay out. You know, like, so because this could go real bad for you guys.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, he was committing treason, essentially. I mean, he was being treasonous against, Yeah,
absolutely. And so you have to keep in perspective that that's actually what most people are going to do.
Yeah.
So most people, so the best 3% better, if the best 3% of us just like lets whatever is going to happen, it's over, man. Yeah. So, you know, it's really great to see. I just hope more people do it. I mean, one of my favorite people I always talk about, I've gotten to meet him a couple times, Ian Smith, the guy who kept his gym open. And now he's running for Congress.
Yeah.
And, man, that would be awesome if he won. That would just change the whole playing field. Like, oh shit. You know, you know, I don't know if he has a chance. I don't know the numbers on that, you know, what that looks like for him, but I would love to see that happen, man. And then I'd have a friend in Congress. But it's that kind of stuff needs to happen at the local level, at the small level. All, you know, men need to get back involved in running their world before these people run it into the ground.
Yeah. I think that's a key thing, man. That's what I've had several guys. I talked to Eli Crane, who's running, you know, he's running for Congress, and he's rock solid as well. And I again, I haven't looked at the numbers. I hope he wins, because he's running against, I think, some raging liberal. And man, he said the same. He was like, you know, we need to get involved, even in the small offices. You know, it's immediately, if you're like, well, how can if I want to get involved, okay, I need to run for Congress. You know, your mind immediately goes to like the big leagues. But instead it's like, man, you honestly could probably have more impact in your local government doing some work there, and start there and build up. And, I don't know, but it's well past time. I mean, you know, I'm in a fortunate position as a farmer. Like I have a weird degree of freedom here because I work for myself. I make my living off of the land. The land doesn't give a damn what I say about anybody. Like, you know, that it's going to grow the crops that I plant, and it's going to do what it does. So I've got a weird sense there. So I feel like this one's like, man, I need to. I'm almost doing a disservice by not trying to stand up for it at this point.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we all have different levels of exposure and risk. And, I mean, like I'm self-employed. I mean, I know where my risk is, you know, like as far as, you know, like what the lines are and when I have to like, oh shit, I guess I got to go get a job now.
Yeah.
You know, like, and so, you know, that was where I was with the vaccine. Like, I'm like, well, I can hold out real long, you know, like I don't have to go to work and deal with all that stress. Cause that's a whole different deal. Okay. Well, that's how I feed my family, and they're making me do this or I can't come to work, and then I'm unemployed, and that's a different stress level than, obviously I didn't have that.
Me neither.
Deal with that. So those of us who don't have to risk that part of what we're doing, it is our responsibility to be saying things and so forth.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause it's easy. I said it a few times, like when the heat of the vaccine push was going on, it's like, man, these people just need to quit their jobs. They need to stand their ground. But it's easy to say that when I'm not, I'm not in their shoes. I'm not the one that's like got a family that, if I quit my job, how am I going to provide for my kids, my wife? Who's going to what are we going to do? So it's easy to say that, but so it is. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I mean,
you have to be sensitive to that. You can't just pretend to be like, oh yeah, you should do this. You should go take this risk. That's like, you should go beat those people up. It's a different thing when it's you. I mean, when I was just really grateful throughout the whole pandemic or whatever, that I was in the place in life that I was, because, for most of my life, I think I made $30,000 a year. For years, that was right where I was. And, when I was a truck driver making $14 an hour, what was I going to do? If they would have said, you're required to do this to keep your job, it's not like I had a bunch of other jobs waiting, I was just paying my rent and I didn't have savings, and what would I have done? So you have to, it's good to talk hard and encourage people to take big steps, but everybody has a different level of exposure.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. Well, man, yeah. Well, I know we've kind of hit that hour there time frame. Tell us a little bit about what you got, what's coming up new for you in the upcoming years here.
Oh, well, I mean, I had a book come out last year that was called Fire in the Dark. And I want to kind of actually get back to more art. I mean, I speak a couple times a year and I put that out. I'm on Instagram. That's kind of my main platform at Start the World. And my website is jack-donovan.com. The Way of Men is 10 years old this year, which is kind of crazy to me.
Yeah.
So I put out a hardcover edition. You can order it now. Eventually I'm going to order a few boxes and do signed copies and so forth. So that's kind of the big thing this year, and just a number of other little projects. I have this kind of magazine project called Chest that we've been working on, as far as kind of profiles some of the guys who are actually, manly dudes who are actually trying to do a good thing in the world. That's when I interviewed Ian Smith for that. I interviewed John Lavelle for it, and it's just kind of cataloging actual interviews, because everybody does podcasts. I mean, I'm on one right now, but people, it's hard to get a good article written about you these days. If you're not, let me tell you, if you're not on the whatever Globo side.
You've been called alt-right and everything else, man. I've seen some of the good, the fine, upstanding articles they've put out about you.
Oh yeah. It's not great. It's not my favorite. I mean, obviously, I was actually involved in the alt-right, but that was before it became what it. What it became. I wrote for their magazine and stuff like that, but I've never said anything that bad about races and stuff like that. I mean, that's not. You'll never find me saying that, because I never did.
Yeah.
Was I hanging out with people who did? Yes. I was around some people who did, but you're from Tennessee. I'm sure you've heard some words too.
Oh yeah.
But that doesn't mean that I agree with it. That's a thing in American politics and culture and so forth. You used to be able to hang out with people that you didn't agree with.
Yeah.
About everything. And who the hell do you agree with about everything? Really. I mean, even friends, there's always going to be something. It was interesting to actually go and say, well, I don't believe this, but I want to see what this guy has to say.
Yeah.
And he's right about this one thing. He's wrong about these 5 things. And that's the way it was when I was dealing with the alt-right. I'm like, there's this one point that we agree on, and this other point that we agree on. This is bullshit. But we used to be able to say that and draw those lines. Now it's all association smears. If you were in a room with so-and-so 10 years ago, then you clearly believe everything that they've ever said.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous. Not even the way humans operate,
Well, that's kind of the same they did with Trump, if you voted for Trump, then they were trying to label like Trump supporters domestic terrorists. And it's like,
yeah,
because I voted for this guy, I'm now a terrorist. Like,
yeah, which is kind of cool that like whatever 49% of the country
is domestic terrorists. Yes,
you know, like that's kind of an overshoot there, you know. But
yeah, I don't know, man. It'll be interesting. We're in interesting times. The old phrase, heard it 100 times. Strong times or hard times create strong men create good times create weak men. And
right.
And we are like definitely in that weak men stage right now.
Sure.
And there is a part of me, like when I think about this crazy cyborg attack, there's like a very morbid, dark part of me that's like, maybe we need this. Maybe we need the freaking robots to go ahead and start, so men can have to step up and be men and do something about it. Bring us back.
Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna have like, didn't think I'd have to be John Connor, but didn't see that coming. That was a movie.
Yeah.
But yeah. I mean, well, like the technology is probably not that far away, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, man, for sure. Well, anything you'd like to close with?
Oh, not really. Yeah. I said just I kind of been doing podcasts just because of the way I met at 10 years old, and I think it's the most important book I ever wrote.
Yeah.
So I think that if you haven't read it, I think that it's really good at saying something that's everybody need a good starting place.
Yeah.
For what masculinity is, and then when you're going to go whatever what your culture is, your religion is, whatever. But it's a good starting place. Well, again, like kind of Bill writes, like this is what we can agree on. If you take these pieces out of masculinity, it's not masculinity anymore.
Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of my big push right now is just working on that. And then personally, I'll probably just work. I would like to do more art because, like I said, I've been saying that we need more art, and I can do that. So maybe I should. So we'll see.
I think it's kind of the golden time to do that. And I feel like you're seeing, Ben Shapiro, I talked about him earlier, his company Daily Wire, they're actually putting movies out now. We're seeing that shift. I think it's one of the things that's hurting the left is they have been pushing us so hard that they're creating this side that's like fed up with it. Right. It's been I will say kind of a slow burn, but like, it's like every day I turn on or see another thing about the LGBT. It used to be like LGBT, then it was LGBTQ, and then it's like LGBTQPRXP, like plus, and like keeps on. Yeah. I'm like, my God.
Wait, now it's just everybody. Wait,
yes. When did I get in this group?
Yeah. Like it might have added you yesterday. You don't know.
Yeah. So I'm along for the ride, but I think that it is a good time for people, whether you're, like I said, art, film, writing, any of those things. I think it's time. It's time for people to stand up, man. I mean, if enough of us stand up, like they can't cancel everybody. That's the thing about it. Like not all of us can be canceled because eventually, I mean, how are you going to cancel everyone? Like they've tried with Joe Rogan, because he's crushing CNN, it's hilarious to see him destroying CNN. And it's like every time they attack him, he gets stronger. So I think we're in a great place for the shift to happen.
Right. Yeah, I think so too.
So you guys go check out what Jack is doing. You shared your website and your page there. I will say I have Way of Men, but I bought it probably, I bet I bought it 7 or 8 years ago. I'm going to try to nab one of those hardcover copies, but now I'm going to try to get one of the autographed ones. That's the one I'm going to have to try to get to add up there. It'll look good next to it. When did you say those will be dropping?
Those, unfortunately, because of the pandemic or whatever, they blame everything on that now. Everything moves slow.
Yeah.
Like getting the windows replaced over here. It's like, well, they're a little ways out, like everything moves slow. And so with the books, it's like I put, the books are uploaded. You can order it off Amazon now. But they're going to take a month to print them. If once I order,
Yeah.
I'm just waiting to get my copy to see if I want to change it to glossy. And then if I do that, then I have to upload it and wait for them to approve it. And then I'll order the books and then wait for them to print them. You know,
Yeah.
like with paperbacks, they're fast, but with hardcover, they take longer. So I learned that last year because I put out a book in hardcover, and I had taken pre-orders, and I was sitting on them for a while. I was like, I told you guys this would be out, but they haven't sent me the books yet. So
Yeah.
I didn't want to do that, so I'm like, I'm just gonna put out the money, wait till I get
Just
them,
wait,
and then,
yeah.
then I'll sell them. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Okay.
probably a month or two. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm sure you'll update on Instagram and all that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. We'll be checking on there. Where can people check out Chest?
I think it's actually chessmagazine.com is
okay.
what the address is. And we just posted some new articles. I've been working on it for a while, but I have an interview with Elliot Hulse.
Okay.
I did. I conducted it a while ago, but I still need to finish writing it up. It's sitting there. Waiting for it to do. But we put a really good article. It's a really thoughtful article about science the other day, written by a good friend of mine. And we try to do a few interviews every month with different guys. So it's a good project if people want to check it out.
Okay. I think it's a cool magazine, man. I had Tanner on the show a little while back, and we talked about it because we were talking about how, GQ and Esquire magazine they hate men like us. So, there was no other magazine really for men that kind of was in that style, had the style arena and all those elements involved in it. So it's cool to see what y'all are doing with this magazine. So, I also encourage people to check it out. So, man, you're doing awesome stuff, and I appreciate your time today.
Cool, man. Thank you.
Awesome, man. Hey, guys, I hope y'all have enjoyed this episode. Like I said, go check out Jack, check out Chess Magazine. Doing a lot of awesome stuff. I hope this episode has spurred you to speak your voice a little bit more. And guys, appreciate it. If you watch this on YouTube, I ask that you hit the like button, hit subscribe, share it with your friends. If you listen to the audio, then please leave us a rating and a review, and hope y'all have a good one.